All right, so good morning or good afternoon, whenever y'all watching this video. This is Mr. Collazo, and today we are introducing slope-intercept form, okay? So most likely y'all have seen slope-intercept form in some way. You actually guarantee you have, because we've worked with it in class. But you probably also hopefully been introduced to some of the parts in slope-intercept form, okay? So we're actually gonna turn this sideways and write what some of these letters represent in slope-intercept form. So the first thing we have is Y. So the Y symbolizes the output, right? We talked about input and output before, but in this case, right, Y is always the output. M, which we just talked about, right? We've been finding it for like 2 weeks now. M is the slope, okay? So whatever letter we have right here in the M spot, that is the slope, okay? The input is the X value, right? We've known that. When we talked about input and output is the X, output is the Y. So that means the slope is the number attached to the X, the input, okay? And then the B, that is kind of maybe a little new to y'all. That is the Y-intercept, right? We talked about that a little bit last week, but we're gonna get way more into it this week. So Y is the output, M is the slope, the input is X, and the Y-intercept is B, okay? So, just kind of quick, visualization of the Y-intercept, right? We've talked about it before. I'm gonna show y'all again. So, with a Y-intercept, remember, is where a point crosses the Y-axis. So it can be a point like that. And remember, it's written as the ordered pair, 0, comma, some value of Y. In this case, it would be 0, -5, okay? So that's our B. Now, if we look down here, we're going to identify some slope and Y-intercepts from these equations. So the first one, I have Y equals X minus 5, okay? So we need to identify two things, right? We need to identify our slope, which is M. So I'm looking for M. And I'm looking for the Y-intercept, which is B, okay? So looking at this equation, right? Y equals X minus 5. If we remember, M is what's in front of the X, okay? But if I look at this, right? In front of the X, I don't have anything. But hopefully you remembered, right? We've said this enough times. If you have an X by itself, there is an imaginary 1 in front of it, okay? So that means my M, my slope for this equation for number 1 is 1. The slope is 1, okay? Now, the Y-intercept. So if I look, remember the Y-intercept is the B. It's what comes at the very end, or it's what's by itself in the equation, okay? No variable attached to it. So if I look here in number 1, the number with no variable attached is back here. It's -5. So my B for this equation is -5, okay? So my slope is 1. My Y-intercept is -5. Easy, right? So, number 2. Again, I need my M and my B, okay? So, this is a very common way that they're going to try to trick you, okay? So, in this equation, I have Y equals 13 minus 5X. So, I'm looking for my M first, and that's my slope. That's the number attached to the X, okay? So, what a lot of people do is they'll get in the habit of seeing the M come first, right? And if I look at this equation, 13 comes first. But that is not the slope, okay? The slope is what's attached to the X. So what's attached to the X is this -5. So my slope is right here, -5, okay? It's what's attached to the X. The Y-intercept is the number by itself. So here in number 2, the number by itself is 13, okay? So my Y-intercept is 13, okay? So they're gonna try to trick you, they're gonna flip it up on you, but that's okay. You just remember the slope is attached to the X, okay? Now, in number 3, okay? So this is a real funky one, okay? This is probably one of the tougher ones you're gonna have to see. So if we look at this, right? This is not in slope-intercept form, okay? Because this is slope-intercept form, right? Y equals mx plus b. So it should be y equals something, right? But if I look at this, I do not have that. So I need to rearrange it so it's in slope-intercept form, okay? So to do that, I need to solve for y. So I need the y by itself, okay? So to start solving, remember, we did this in the very beginning part of the year, like the first kind of couple months. So I draw my line down the equal sign, okay? And I'm gonna start moving stuff over, okay? Or I'm gonna start canceling stuff. So I'm gonna get rid of this positive 6 first. So to get rid of positive 6, I'm going to subtract 6, right? What I do to one side, I do to the other. So I'm gonna subtract 6 here. I draw my line, okay? Plus 6 minus 6, that's a 0 pair. Everything else I'm gonna bring down. So 3y minus 12x equals 0 minus 6. Well, that's just negative 6, okay? Now, I still need to get the y by itself, so I need to undo this minus 12x. So to undo minus 12x, I need to add 12x, okay? Now, I'm also gonna add 12x to the right side, but these are not like terms, so I'm gonna write it kind of off to the side like that, okay? Then we draw our line, work down. Minus 12x plus 12x, 0 pair. I bring down 3y. On the right side, I have negative 6 and plus 12x, okay? But I'm gonna put the x in the front. So I'm gonna rewrite it like this. I'm gonna write 12x minus 6, okay? It's the same thing, I prefer the x to be in the front, okay? That's just my personal preference. And now we need the y by itself, last step. So I have 3 times y here. I need to undo that. So I'm gonna divide the left side by 3. What I do to one side, I do to the other. But here we have to remember, I need to divide everything by 3 on the right side, okay? So the 12x and the negative 6. Now, when I do that, I get a value of 1y. So I get y equals 12 divided by 3, I get 4x. Negative 6 divided by 3, I get negative 2, okay? Now, I know that was a lot of work and you're not gonna have many like that, but just know sometimes you're gonna have to solve for y to get it in slope-intercept form, okay? Now, this is in slope-intercept form, right? Y equals 4x minus 2. Now I can find the slope and the y-intercept, okay? So the slope, remember, that's the number attached to the x, is 4 in this case. So I'll put a little 4. That's my slope. My y-intercept is the number by itself. In this case, it is negative 2, right at the very end. So my b equals negative 2. Okay, and that's it. That's the longest one we're gonna see today. Let's go to number 4 now. So number 4, I have y equals 1/2 x. So again, we need our slope and y-intercept, okay? And this one's a little different. So my slope, remember, is what's attached to the x. So if I'm looking at this one, I have 1/2 x. So what's attached is all of this 1/2. So my slope is 1/2, okay? Easy. Now, the y-intercept, we remember, that's the number by itself, right? So if I look at this equation, I have no number by itself, right? There's nothing after the 1/2 x or before it. So that means my y-intercept is 0, okay? It's 0. It's not none. You're just going to write 0, okay? Number 5, m and b, right? So again, start with the slope. My slope is the number attached to the x. But if I look here, there is no x, okay? So that means, just like in number 4, if something's missing, the slope is 0, okay? The m is 0. This is a horizontal line, okay? And we'll get to graphing soon, okay? So the slope of this one is 0. But the b, remember, that's the number by itself. If I'm looking here, well, I do have a number by itself, right? I have 10. So my y-intercept is 10, okay? So kind of see the difference here, right? I have 1/2 x, my slope is 1/2, and my y-intercept is 0. But when I have just the number, y equals 10, the slope is 0, and the y-intercept is that number, okay? So just kind of keep that in mind. Next, sliding down. So now we're going to write equations in slope-intercept form, okay? So it's kind of the opposite of what we did up here. I think it's a little easier. So for number 6, okay, I need to write the equation in slope-intercept form. So number 6, my m equals -5, my b is 3. So every one of these equations, we're going to start with y equals. Every single one, okay? Now, remember, the m is what's attached to the x, right? So here, my m is -5. So we can start y equals -5x, okay? Now, my b is 3, so plus b would be plus 3. Okay, that's it. Easy. Number 7, same thing. We start with y equals, okay? My m is 1/4, so I attach that to the x, so y equals 1/4 x. Now, my b is -2, so at the back of my equation, I'm going to write -2, okay? So see the difference? When my b is positive, plus 3. When it's negative, -2, okay? Make sure y'all do that. Number 8. So number 8, my m is -1, my b is -8. So again, we start with y equals, okay? Now, the -1 goes in front of the x, so -1x. My b is -8, so -8, okay? Now, this is correct, right? But normally you don't see equations like this with the -1x, okay? Because remember, just like up here, when you have an x by itself, there's an imaginary one, okay? So here, instead of this -1x, we can rewrite this as y equals -x minus 8, okay? That's the proper way to write it, okay? So this is correct, right? But this is proper. This is how you're going to see it on tests and all that kind of stuff, okay? I kind of forgot to mention this. So for 6 and 7, right? These are correct answers, but we can also write them like this, right? Y equals, we could put the y-intercept in the front. So it could be 3 minus 5x, right? Those are both perfectly correct answers, okay? We can do the same thing for 7. If we rearranged it, y equals -2 plus 1/4 x, okay? Those are both perfectly right, but I would prefer, I'm sure y'all would prefer to write it just like this, with mx plus b in the front, okay? Number 9. So number 9, I have the m equals 4, b equals 0, okay? So again, we start with y equals. Now my m goes in front of the x, so my m is 4x, okay? That's how I start my equation. Now my b is 0, okay? So we can write plus 0, okay? But again, like this is correct, right? But it's not proper, right? We don't usually say plus 0, right? Up here, we didn't write plus 0 here. It was just y equals 1/2 x. So my equation for number 9, my proper equation is y equals 4x, okay? That's the proper way to write it. Number 10, we can finish it off here. We'll start with y equals, okay? So my m is 0. M is attached to the x, so y equals 0x, okay? Minus 1/2, that's my y-intercept, so I can write -1/2, okay? But again, just like number 5 up here, when the m is 0, you don't have to write 0x, right? We can get rid of that. And we can just kind of simplify it to y equals -1/2, okay? That's what we want. Those are going to be the answers you're going to see, okay? So that's all for today. That's kind of our introduction for slope-intercept form. So if y'all have any questions, you can ask y'all teacher. But other than that, y'all have a great day.